Hello and welcome everyone. We are starting our 5th webinar for this fall semester. This one is titled Student Life. So we have worked hard to bring you a number of our current students in our Master of Public Service and Administration and our Master of International Affairs to join us today. So you're only going to hear me for a couple of minutes to read out the agenda, and then we're going to have our students introduce themselves and what they're studying. And then we've got a couple of slides that highlight some aspects that we would just like to cover with them. And this could go anywhere from probably about 40 minutes up to the full hour, just depending on the interactions from the attendees today. So thank you guys again for joining us. We're going to be taking questions. So if you've got some for us, jot them in the chat, or we will allow some time if you need to unmute, raise your hand, and we can call on you guys and you can ask those questions. Just realize this is being recorded. So whether or not you want to turn on your camera is up to you. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about the student life and the experiences, and that's going to start with just the general statements of adjusting from undergrad to grad school and what that was like, either in the classroom, the expectation from professors, anything that the students want to comment on that. We'll then talk about how they have been putting together their curriculum, the customization of the courses that we offer. So there will be a slide for both the MIA and the MPSA, those students to talk about those options. We'll also cover the capstone projects, which for the MIA, they haven't started them yet, but they can still talk a little bit about that. MPSA can talk about what they're on right now. We will cover student resources and the support that we have through our programs for writing and leadership and career services. They can talk about their internship opportunities that they had completed this summer, or whether it was some kind of language immersion. Opportunities for involvement as students here. And then living in Bryan College Station, just generally what those expectations, maybe coming from a bigger university or from a small town, and what that's like to adjust to Bryan College Station. And then we'll cover it with what I wish I knew, just some tips of advance. If you could go back, what would you give advice to these prospective students? And then again, what's on your mind? So if you're attending this and you've got questions, be sure to ask us of those. So I'm looking to see attendee-wise. Stockton had class today. He is my GA who works as a grad assistant in admissions. So I'm going to skip him and we'll come back to him later. Sanjeen, I saw that you were here. So if you guys can go through this and then I'll roll these in order. If you just introduce yourself, kind of covering what program you're in, what you're studying. You can even drop in where you went to school. It'd be great.
Thank you, Ms. Catherine. I'm Sanjeen Khan. I'm doing Masters of Public Service and Administration at the Bush School. I'm a second-year student. And before that, I'm from Pakistan. I did my undergrad from Pakistan in economics and finance. And here I am concentrating on data science and economic policy. I also have 4 years of experience in the public sector. I worked at the Ministry of Finance as an economist for 4 years, and now I'm here.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. I'm Alexis. I am a Master of International Affairs student, and I'm on what we call the IDEP track, which is International Development and Economic Policy. So I concentrate in conflict and development and international economic development. My background is actually in communications, specifically the non-governmental communications process, organizational structure and all that. And I did my undergrad at Pepperdine University, which is a small school in Malibu, California. And I went straight from undergrad to this program. And I'm from Oklahoma, and I lived in Rwanda for 4 years.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Ridenauer. I'm a second-year MPSA student. I'm on the nonprofit management track, and I created an individually designed concentration in immigration and border security policy. So I had an opportunity to kind of develop my own concentration with some classes that are offered at the Bush School. I am from Wyoming, and I went to the University of Wyoming for my undergrad for a degree in international studies, and I came straight here after that.
Hi everyone, I'm Tori. I'm an international affairs student. My track is national security and diplomacy, and my concentrations, as y'all can see, are intelligence and American homeland security. Before coming to Texas A&M, I was over at Ole Miss, and I did my bachelor's degree in international studies with a regional focus on Latin America and Spanish. Before coming to Texas A&M, I didn't have work experience. I came right from undergrad, but I've held a variety of internships at think tanks, other publications, and the government.
Okay, thank you guys for introducing yourselves. And eventually when Stockton joins with us, he will take over moderating this and keep this moving. But we're going to start, I'm going to leave this slide up for a few minutes. And what I'd like you guys to do is talk a little bit about that adjustment to grad school. And it won't matter who goes first, just unmute yourself so we know that you're ready to talk. And maybe, fixate on one or two of these aspects when you're talking, and give us some insight on what that relationship with the faculty, the expectations, what your typical week looks like. We don't want everyone to cover all of the questions, so just kind of jump around. But any one of you would like to volunteer to go first, just unmute and we'll start that way.
I can jump in. So kind of to start with the homework load and just time management in general, coming straight from undergrad, at first I was not working, and it felt like my schedule was still very full. So there's a whole lot of reading to do, especially in the economic international affairs side of the program. And there's tons of like study groups and whatnot that you can take advantage of, but that does take up a lot of your time. If you tack working onto it, I think you'll find that your schedule is very full, but in a really great way. So you can really easily be kind of immersed in the Bush School way of doing things with like your coworkers, if you are a grad assistant. And there's always people at the Bush School who are studying that can help you out if you ever get stressed with that.
I would also say the biggest difference I noticed from my undergrad to coming to the Bush School is that in undergrad, I was spending a lot of time on extracurriculars and clubs and organizations that I was a part of. And now I came to the Bush School and I'm still involved, but I spend far less of my time on that and more time working on homework and classwork, and then also a job. So I work more than I used to, but I also am not doing as many extracurricular activities. So there's plenty of ways to be involved at the Bush School, but I don't, like me personally, I'm not spending as much time on those things as I was in my undergrad, which was very different for me.
I have, before starting this, so I was already working. So in my undergrad, as the others already said, that I was, yes, involved in, because I was not working during my undergrad, so I had a lot of time to spend on the other activities. Then I started working. But here, since my first semester, I was studying and working at the same time. But that doesn't mean that you won't have time for, yes, you won't have as much time to do the extracurricular activities as you had in your undergrad. But you'll still, even if you are working, you will still find room to do other stuff. In the Bush School, we have the Bush School intramurals where we play all sports. So I was involved in those sports. And many of our Bushy now, even we have created teams and they are all full. It means that everyone still is able to take time out to play as well. And this is something that balances the work life stuff, that during the day you do your we do our work and study, but during the evenings I balance it with the sports that I play, others will balance with their workouts and other stuff. So you'll still find time, but yes, things are intensive, not as much as undergrad, but still you'll see that it is fun. And the good thing about Bush School is everyone is very supportive. So I was not good, very good with writing. And on the MPSA side, in the IS side, you have intensive readings. On the few courses that I took there, that's what I observed. But on the essay side, there are many writing stuff, the policy proposals that you write, but there are people that will always be there to help you out. So it's the people that makes the difference here, and it makes it easier for you to just hang on here.
Yeah, I'll speak to the faculty mix a little bit. I think at the Bush School, there's a fantastic mix of practitioner and academics, and it really depends on the specific tracks that you want to study. Coming from the national security side of things and the intelligence specific concentration, almost all of my classes now at this stage are taught by practitioners, which I really value, and it's how I learn best. And I think my advice for anyone looking at grad school is to look at the professors that you would be taking and how you learn best. And you want to see, if you want more practitioner heavy, I think the Bush School is great depending on what you want to do, but there's a good mix overall. And like that relates in classes, like Sangeet was saying, on the IA side, there's a lot of reading, but also in certain classes, you do like a lot of simulations and practical hands-on experience, which I love.
Anybody else want to comment about the professionalism that we show here, either the way we dress, how we act in class, time management? Feel free to do that. And then Juliet has dropped a question in the chat that we can answer in just a few seconds if someone wants to cover that one too, about living and traveling in College Station.
Yeah, I will say about our classroom environment is very different than undergrad. At least in my undergrad, in your core courses, it's a big lecture. There's at least 30 people in it. And so you're kind of detached from the professor and your classmates. Grad school is very much about interacting with your classmates and interacting with your professor. So it's even in the required core courses that everyone has to take, they're a little bigger, but you still have a lot of interaction with your professor and you still have a lot of interaction with your classmates. Group projects are a heavy emphasis on the MPSA side, and it's they really emphasize working as teams and not as individuals who just bring their individual portion together. It really builds that sort of professional camaraderie when you're doing presentations with each other, and developing your professional skills as well as professional relationships with people who you'll know and probably run into for the rest of your life in your individual fields. And I think it also is just an extra added level of professionalism that everyone at the Bush School is always dressed business casual. At least for me, it puts me in the mentality of this is like a job and not like my undergrad where I went to class in sweatpants and sat in the back and didn't pay attention. It really helped me kind of develop into the next level of student where I'm like, this is a job, I'm paying really close attention, I'm taking good notes, and being on top of things because I have high expectations for myself and so does everyone else. And your professors just really want to see you succeed. And I think that the whole environment just kind of builds into that added level of professionalism that we're all working on building.
Also, I'll jump in on that note. I've had several classes where professors will unexpectedly bring in guest speakers who very frequently are pretty high up people, sometimes in the government, sometimes in other capacities. But it's good to have a standard of dressing professionally on the daily because you never know who's going to walk into the Bush School and who you want to make a good impression on, or who could be your next career connection. So it's very helpful in that sense. But then to jump to answering your question, Juliet, I do know several students who don't have a car and they take advantage of our public bus system here, which goes all over campus, but also to several living complexes around campus. You just have to be strategic in where you're choosing to live. Some students have bikes. It is not the most walkable campus, but there is a pretty good public transportation system if you want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and
Here-
to add on that, to on Juliet's comment that I don't have a car, so but the university bus system, it is free. You can, and as Alexis said, that you have to be strategic. You must know all the routes and stuff, so it helps. And other than that, people here are also sometimes, if you even though if you do not take help from anyone, you will still be able to do all the stuff, grocery and everything. But again, people are very helpful here, and your friends will help you out with everything, with your grocery. And I've seen all my friends who do not have car, they are helped out by their friends.
There was another question that asked about how many students in those core classes. Let's start with someone from the MPSA, and then we'll cover, maybe Stockton can jump in for the IA. I did want to ask, I had understood that most of our classes top out around 20 students. If you're experiencing classes that might be 25 to 30, just let me know what those might be, and I can change some of my talking points on other slides, but I believe that's the case. So an MPSA student, if one of you will speak up first.
Yeah, I think they are about 20 max. Sometimes the professor will let in a couple of extra people because they like have requested or like someone's schedule just didn't work out. So there might be like max 25. But yeah, those core courses, which are the biggest ones, are like 20 to 25 students. And then for the non-core courses, I have seen everything from like 15 to, I'm in a class right now that there's 6 of us. So it just kind of depends. But the core courses, yeah, I think max 25 students or something around there.
Yeah, and then on the MIA side, some of those core courses might have 30 or 35 possibly, especially whenever it comes like economics. But those are classes that are going to be lecture heavy. And so it's kind of one of those things where it doesn't matter if you had 100 people in the class or 5 people in the class, the professor's talking 95% of the time because they are lecture heavy classes. And so they're a little less important to have those small groups. But I mean, my class sizes have ranged anywhere between 10 students to 20 students outside of those core classes. And those tend to be a little bit more discussion based, involving the students along with the professor there.
Hey, Stockton, I'm going to let you also, if you've got that chat section up, if you can go up to the section where it was asking what's the typical form of coursework in the MPSA program, and then divvy that out. I'll just let you cover those for a few minutes. And then when we're ready, I'll change the slide over, but I'm going to stay on this for a few more minutes.
Yeah. Mary or Sangeet, if one of you want to talk a little bit about the MPSA side, and then Tori or Alexis can talk about the IA side.
Yeah, so on the MPSA side, in the first semester, we have some quant and economics courses, and the other are very essay or writing intensive. What I've observed in the past 1 year, if there are some people who were good with quant, so the quant subjects didn't take as much of their time as the writing courses, but some were good with writing, so they were doing their writing essays and within 1 or 2 hours, but they were spending more time on the econ side. So it depends on, if you have a good background on both, then at least the first semester will be a very smooth ride for you. But if you are good in one, that is but not the other, then it means that you will have two courses that will be easy, two that you will have spending some time on. But again, it's your interaction with professors will make it easy for you, whatever your skill level is.
Alexis or Tori, do you want to talk a little bit more about kind of the difference in class structure and assignment structure in the IA courses?
Sure. I can also kind of lead this into the next question a little bit too, specifically with IDEP. The IA side of the program has two separate sides, and with IDEP, you have to take two quant courses like you do if you're MPSA. For the national security and diplomacy side, you just have to take one quant course. And it is important to note, if you have a background or experience with certain softwares like R, Stata, and a quantitative background and can prove that, you can clip out of the first quant course. But I think many IDEPs would highly advise trying to take as much advantage of that as you can, because it's very useful in your continuation of courses. Coursework tends to be pretty heavy reading on the IA side, like Sangeet said earlier, but all of the content is very useful. We sometimes manage that by having student reading groups. So you'll read everything, but you take notes with other people, and so you don't have to worry as much about being specific in your note taking for everything. You have to take an international theory, politics theory class if you are a national security and diplomacy student, and foreign policy. You have to take an economics course, which you'll take many of those if you're international economic development. Also, international economic development tends to be a smaller side of the program. So if you're looking for really small class sizes, you are a little bit more likely to do that depending on what concentration you decide to focus on. But if you have more questions specifically, I would be happy to answer.
Yeah, and I also wanted to, I'll go ahead and answer kind of the next one going into that from Christy. If you could clarify your first question, but in terms of how large the cohorts are, generally the cohorts can range around 90 to 100 in each of those programs. I will say the Bush School has a larger cohort than most programs. There's, of course, pros and cons to that. I would definitely say on the pros side, because we have large cohorts that come in, you have a wider selection of classes. So if you look at different grad programs across the board, the selection that you have is not, there's not a whole lot on that. Usually, you kind of have like this A or B class that you take for this. Versus at the Bush School, you can build concentrations. You're able to also go across, we have the SA side and the IA side. And so you can actually take classes on both sides of that. And so I think that is kind of one of those areas of, we do have a larger cohort, so there's a bigger community, but you're kind of able to build your classes around that because of that area. Really quickly, for any of our current Bush students, have we talked a little bit about the practitioner and academic mix yet? A little bit, okay.
Stockton, what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to the next slide and just talk kind of an overview of this for just a second. And then I'll go to the MIA one, and then we'll get back to some questions again.
Yeah. So whenever it comes to MPSA and any essays on here, you're welcome to jump in at any point here. But you have your three tracks: public management, public policy analysis, and then nonprofit management. So whenever you are applying to the Bush School, you're selecting one of these tracks. Now, a difference between the international affairs side and the public service side are the essay side, the public service and administration side. You do not have to choose a concentration. And so you choose one of these tracks to go on, and they have their core classes, but outside of that, the concentrations are pretty much built around what you're wanting to study. And so you do not have to choose one or two or three of these concentrations. You get to basically build your own schedule there. That can come in taking, different tracks, kind of focused classes, or even possibly taking some on the international affairs side. You kind of have your opportunity there to build around. I know Mary can maybe talk a little bit about, like, she built her own concentration. And so Mary, do you mind just quickly going through that process that you went through in building that?
Yeah, it's really simple. I worked with my advisor. I told her what I was interested in, and I have a background in international studies, the focus in Latin America. And so I kind of wanted to incorporate that into my graduate program. And so based on classes that are taught as electives, some of them are part of these concentrations and some of them are just general electives. I put together an individually designed concentration. It's 3 courses. I filled out a form, had my advisor sign it, had the department head sign it, and I was all set to go. So it's really simple. And I kind of just cherry picked courses that were part of concentrations to make something that I wanted to suit my interests.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
Stockton, before you go to MIA, I do also want to say, people have come in and have taken these concentrations and we're on one path, and then maybe in talking to some of their colleagues in the MIA or through someone who took an elective through another department, they might have then crafted their own and changed direction. And that does happen here, right? Somebody who might write a personal statement, we go, great, this is a nonprofit person, can't wait to have them here. They take 1 or 2 nonprofits and then head in another direction with Homeland Security, or vice versa. So just know that you don't have to have it all figured out. There is room to mix and match. Sometimes they'll even start a concentration and then decide, I don't want to finish taking all 3. I only did 1 or 2. Now I'm going to go ahead and maybe do a double track. I'm going to do public management and analysis. So there's just a lot of flexibility in putting that together. Okay, enough said. Now you're on for MIA. I'm going to change this.
Just to add one more thing here, and you are not limited to take courses at Bush School. You can take courses in other departments at Texas A&M as well. Right now, I'm taking a course at the statistics department, another from economics department. So there is a lot more flexibility here when it comes to elective.
Yeah, and to answer the question that just came across in the chat, what is the process to take courses outside of the Bush School? Those just have to be approved, and both essays and IA can correct me on here, by the department head. And oftentimes we'll just include an additional assignment outside of that. So especially on main campus, in some of the undergrad courses, you can have an area that interests you, but if the kind of the level of work doesn't meet a grad school level, the department head or your academic advisor can recommend with the professor about an additional research paper or project that's associated with that class. And so it's still making sure that we meet that academic standard that we're expected to meet here at the Bush School. So moving on to the international affairs side, so IA area, you have 2 tracks that you can choose from here. You have your international development and economic policy, the IDEP track, or national security and diplomacy, NS&D. The nice part about these programs, once again, is there is a lot of overlap in those areas. So we see under the both section here, you have conflict and development methods, pandemic preparedness and disaster response, women, peace and security studies. Those are some of those, overlapping areas. You'll figure out that, there are some classes that are heavy with IDEP students, heavy with national security and diplomacy, but in a large number of the classes, you're really crossed over with both students. And so it kind of gives you more of a holistic view of international affairs. not just learning development or just learning national security and diplomacy. And so, and then you also have your regional studies on this that both tracks are able to choose. Whenever it comes to the IA side, you do have to choose 2 concentrations. Now, from that, you basically can go in and create your own, just as you can on the essay side. And so that's similar to what I did. So I took a conflict and development. I'm national security and diplomacy, so that fits for me. But then I was able to build my own concentration for the second one based partly around the classes I was taking. And that process is pretty easy. One additional point I do want to add is our academic advisors here. Generally, whenever you go to a university, your academic advisors are, under the academic advisement office that you go to. Here, you're assigned a professor. I'm not sure if that has actually been mentioned yet, but you have a professor that is assigned to you, and you go to them for whenever you're talking about, changing concentrations or something like that. You go directly to a professor that we try to pair best with your interest. And that's kind of a different thing about the Bush School here. Capstones. So I'll actually go ahead and let Mary and Sangin quickly talk about their capstones that they're already doing on the essay side. Essays do a year-long capstone. And then IAs will start in the spring semester of your second year. And so real quickly, Mary and Sangin, could you talk about your experience in your capstone so far and what you're working on?
Yeah, so my capstone is our client is a nonprofit organization in out of Austin, Texas, called Allies Against Slavery. And our project is, we are technically called a consulting capstone. So what we do is meet with our client, determine the specific need that they're looking for. And so our client has asked us to make recommendations for how they would scale their organization to be bigger. So there are 10 of us, 10 students, and then our faculty advisor oversees us. And we have individual assignments as well as group assignments, especially in the first semester, and then second semesters pretty much just the group assignment. So it is very similar to a research project, except for it takes a whole year. So we do a literature review. We're going to do data collection and analysis, and then we'll create a final report and present it.
My capstone is on wildlife conservation, and we are working with both the NRCS and the nonprofits. But the main thing that we are doing is that we are sending out the surveys to students from 18 to 30 years of age to see how the future, assuming that these will be the future policymakers, and we want to gauge what is their approach towards wildlife conservation. Do they like, and then categorizing them into mutualist, traditionalist, and see where the future, how will the future policymakers approach towards wildlife conservation. And we are 12 in a group, and we have then we have subgroups, the research group, we have data group, the survey group. All the groups are working on their own, and then on Fridays we meet and talk about the progress to see that everyone is on the same page. And as Mary said, it is, again, it is like a research project, but it's a group research project. And the second thing is we are working on a real world problem, interacting with the real people who are on the ground and asking their feedback. So it is not the research project that we would do in undergrad, where we were doing it on our own in isolation and just talking to our advisors. So, and this is a student-run project. The advisor is just there to guide us whenever we need guidance. Other than that, students will have to do all the stuff on their own. So it is based on learning based thing that based on your experience, then we have to figure it out our own self.
Thanks, Sangeen and Mary. So as mentioned, the IAs have not started on our capstones yet, but the biggest difference, I think, that kind of puts the Bush School away from other maybe programs is on this capstone, we're finding real life clients with real life problems. And so you're having a student kind of research approach on how to actually fix these, especially on the IA side. This could be State Department, this could be USAID, this could be somewhere in the DoD, Department of Defense. And so I think that, this is kind of one of those areas where it does set the Bush School apart and remind you that this is a professional master's program. And so I think that it's really important to get those real world group working experiences, because in government or a nonprofit life, you're going to be working in those cases.
And Stockton, I want to add to that. I didn't cover this at the first part of it, but students have a say in which of these capstones that they enroll with. So there may be somewhere between 7 to 10 options that are presented by the faculty, who will talk about the scope of the work that their client will do, and students will rank order them and then be chosen by a staff member. They'll assign them one. And that way we are able to divvy these out through the students, and this kind of works as an elective, right? And some people will choose one that is related to their area of study. A nonprofit might choose a nonprofit, but others may choose something different, because this is more about the project skills, not necessarily about the content. So they may take a professor that they hadn't been able to take yet because they're not in their area, but they've always wanted to work with them. Some do it because they want to travel at a certain location that project gets to go to. So just another great example of some of that flexibility in creating this of interest to you. Now I'm going to move to the next slide. We've got a couple more of these. But this is student resources. So how have you interacted with any of these programs? What were some of the memorable moments in maybe getting help? Just something that was fun or different between the speakers, the leadership writing. So Stockton, I'll start with you and let you grab one of these, and then each one of you just take a different type of topic or comment on something.
Yeah, one that I'll just throw out there is networking with alumni and guests. We already know that the Aggie Network is alive and well, and it is a great place to get hired. They say Aggies hire Aggies. That goes just as well for Bush School grads, hire Bush School grads. I think that is one area where you see, especially if you're wanting to go into nonprofit or government work, there's just a plethora of Bush School alums that are out there that you can reach out to. And even if you just want to know more about the organization, or whether you're writing a research paper, they're always happy to talk to you and explain about their experience. And then also, I think part of getting to be at the Bush School is working with donors for the Bush School. So we provide a very affordable yet highly sought after education. And so I think getting to work with those donors, many of which knew President Bush, is really an awesome opportunity to just learn more about, the president's respect for the school, his passion for the school, and his passion for public service. And so I think that is really important. And I'll let anyone else on the chat touch on any of these topics here.
All right, I was called out, so I will speak. So speaking to the program specifically, so I am pretty involved in the Intelligence Studies program. The other institutes and centers also put on fantastic events. All of these do. I mean, as Stockton said, we get so many quality speakers here on such a diverse array of topics. And it's such a great opportunity to listen to people, to network with them. I specifically, I'm the graduate assistant for the intelligence studies program. So we just do events like that. We had an awesome seminar this spring, which was my favorite thing, I think, at the Bush School yet. It was a Women in Intelligence conference, and it was a 2-day event where we brought in tons of really impressive professional women, and we got to meet with them and have all sorts of events. It was really cool. The networking with alumni and guests, I love doing that. This summer, I was really, really lucky and had the opportunity to go stay with some donors in Colorado. And I went to a security conference up there for a week, which was a fantastic opportunities. And there are so many like that, chances to travel or meet people as part of the Bush School experience, which I just love so much. And then for library resources, this is so small, but I love the library. And as a graduate student at the Bush School, you can get books delivered to you in the mailroom. So I take full advantage of that and get books all the time. And regarding language assistance, I don't know if this has been touched on, but we do, for IA students, you have to study a language. And so the Bush School provides resources and language tables for a variety of languages at different levels so that you can practice or learn, a new language. So right now I'm studying Croatian, which is really exciting. So I think those are my thoughts.
I can speak a little bit about the writing program. Ms. Razor has come to a couple of my classes before and presented on extremely helpful resources for writing literature reviews, and for she has a lot of great tips for how to speed read academic articles so that you can understand whether it's useful to you or not when you're in the research process, and just how to organize your thoughts and be a more successful writer. I know that in my internship this summer, one of the things they talked about, the legislature wanting most was quality writers. And at the Bush School, you're, especially in the MPSA side, you do a ton of writing. And so the writing program, whether you feel like you're a strong writer or not, the writing program has incredible resources for helping you develop the skills that you feel you might be lacking, and maybe identify areas where you thought you were doing well and you weren't. I always thought my topic sentences were great. Turns out not so good. So I got some help on that. And both of the individuals at the Bush School who assist with writing are truly the most helpful writing resource I've ever had access to. And I cannot speak highly enough of the work that they do, because it has really improved my writing.
And Sangeen or Alexis, if one of you want to jump in, and then we'll move on.
I think, Tori, you especially touched on most of the stuff that I have experience with, but I will speak on the international travel front. Some of the professors at the Bush School provide opportunities for students to go with them, especially over the summer, on projects that they may be doing. We recently had Professor Howell, who teaches classes on terrorism, take a group of students to Israel for a part of the summer, and they took a class and kind of had an immersive learning experience where they got to visit several sites where terrorist attacks had occurred, including a tunnel that was dug by Hezbollah, which was really interesting for some of them. Additionally, Dr. Rule does projects very frequently in the Global South, and so she took several students with her on a research-oriented trip this summer. And once you get to know professors and kind of understand what's going on at the Bush School, you can find out what those opportunities are. Some students also did internships that involved international travel. One went to Iraq this summer. He had to get special permission for that, but there are lots of opportunities, especially if you're in the IA side of the program.
And
Yeah,
to add on the writing program instruction, you were saying?
Go ahead, Sangeen. And then there's also a question in the chat about getting an internship in the US as an international student. So if you wouldn't mind touching on that, that would be great.
Yeah, so for the just to add one more sentence about the writing. So we have the writing center here, and you can take help from them whenever you have an assignment that doesn't make good sense to you, and they are very helpful with that too. And getting an internship in the US as an international student. So I cannot say anything about the IA side because most of the emails that they receive are related to the national security, and maybe this is my friends who are on the IA side but are international students. So this is the something that they face, but still, if they work talk to Mr. Cochran, who is very helpful in with the internship. So he will find something out for you for that. But on the essay side, still, Stockton, if you have to add more or something more about the IS side and how the international students find an internship, then please add to that. But I can talk about the essay side. On the essay side, there are a lot of opportunities because the nonprofits, they do not have any criteria whether you are a US citizen or an international student. There are plenty of opportunities there, even in the state government. So I did my internship at the Texas Workforce Commission, which is a state agency. In the state agency on the essay side, there is they didn't have any criteria whether you are a US citizen or an international. So in this, I applied to many state internships as well. I could get through some, but not through other. But the main criteria was not whether I am an international student or the US student.
Awesome. Thank you, Sangeet. I would say most of that applies on the IA side as well, especially we have a lot of our international students that might actually, on the IA side at least, go home and work in their home country back for their government or do an internship there, along with, it's kind of the same thing even as Americans to go abroad. Sometimes you might have to get those work visas, but usually the career office is really good at that. So kind of transitioning into that, we do require an internship. And then for the IAs, you can opt in for language immersion instead. So that's just done in the summer between your first and second year. And it can be done domestically or internationally. And then we also provide huge amounts of funding, I would say, for that. Generally, it ranges anywhere between $1,000 up to $2,500. And then you can apply for additional funding through the A&M Foundation. So that really offers a great opportunity to get some internships or language immersions that you might not be able to afford on your own. And then career advising and assistance. I would definitely say that this is what the Bush School does well. If you want a job in nonprofit and government, this is the place to go, because we have career staff members that really assist in providing alumni connections, internships, different areas where you can go to find those opportunities. And I would say every day there's job listings, internship opportunities being sent out on that sense. And so you can kind of see some of those employment rates there. The reason, maybe the IA side might be a little lower because of federal hiring. Sometimes it might take up to a year to get security clearances because a lot of our students are focusing on intelligence. That sometimes that 6-month mark is an early cutoff. They might have a job that they're working towards getting qualified for or officially in. But most of our students are employed within 6 months of graduation. And so it really just kind of depends on the area there. Catherine, do you have anything to add on this one?
No, we're good. Just didn't know if there was a student or two that wanted to speak about their internship or working with the office before we move to the next one.
I can talk about my internship a little bit. I was in Washington, DC this summer at the Heritage Foundation, which is it's a nonprofit think tank. I specifically worked in the development office, so I did fundraising and philanthropy type work while I was there. That was something I have been really interested in as a nonprofit management student. And so I had a unique opportunity to work with a massive organization and see how they do fundraising in comparison to some of the smaller organizations. My internship, I would say, went really, really well, and I learned just as much working as I did just figuring out kind of how I liked DC. I always thought maybe I would want to move there and work there after I graduate, and getting to spend the summer there kind of told me a lot about whether or not I want to live there. I will also say, like, just because you don't love your internship, trying something that you're really interested in and figuring out that you're not interested in it can be just as valuable an experience as having an internship that you absolutely love. I really liked mine, but that's not to say that I didn't also learn about some of the things I didn't really like. Part of my job was like data entry, and that wasn't my favorite. So while I really enjoyed it in general, I now know that I don't really want to do a job that's super heavy on data. To answer your questions, how flexible are the schedules? It just kind of depends on your employer. I know the Bush School requires a 10-week, 40-hour-a-week internship requirement for you to get the hours that you need. My internship was 12 weeks. That was just the way that the program was set up through my employer. And I worked 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday in office. So the schedules kind of depend. If you get an internship that is is remote work, that will kind of depend. But there is that hour requirement that you need to meet. But there is some flexibility regarding how you do that, and it's kind of a case-by-case basis. So when I first was applying for internships, I hadn't heard back from anyone, and it was April, and I kind of got panicky. So I had a job at the time that I was working in that was in my field of study, and I had gotten special permission with my department head that I could count the hours I had worked part-time in the spring plus part-time in the summer as my internship requirement, but I had just needed to get that approved. Everything worked out anyway, and I did get the internship I wanted, but if there are reasons that you need a more flexible schedule, you just need to get that approved with the department head, usually.
That's great insight. Hey, I'm going to kind of skip over. We got two more slides, one doing with opportunities for involvement. I'm just leaving this up here for a few seconds, but students are heavily involved in any number of these organizations, either in the community or here within the Bush School or on Texas A&M campus. And you guys can come back and speak to some of these to an extent. But the slide that I really want to cover these last few minutes is living in Bryan College Station. Earlier, we had the question about how easy is it for walkability or biking, and you can bike to a certain extent, just realizing nearly everyone here has cars, so you just have to be careful with traffic. There are some bike lanes on campus, but some of the areas don't. So it's brutally hot here in the summer and into September at times, and going on to April and May. So you just have to remember, if you're biking or you're walking or you're on that scooter, you're going to get sweaty if you don't have a way to kind of cool off once you're here. So I'm going to leave this slide up for a few minutes, and this will kind of end it. And then I'll put people's emails up in case you guys want to reach out directly to any of these students. So maybe everyone grab one of these and cover something. Would be great.
I'll really quickly touch on cost of living. I would definitely say, if you're coming from outside the US, but if you're inside the US, this, like there is a little bit of a housing crisis right now. So rents increasing across the board everywhere. But in terms of affordability, College Station is just about one of the best places you're going to get. Of course, whenever I was looking at grad schools, I had to factor in what is the cost of tuition, but I also had to look at where am I going? If I'm going to New York City to pursue a grad degree, I'm going to be spending significantly more than coming here. The truth is that College Station, it's affordable. And there's a decent amount to do here, but most of the time you're going to be working on your studies. And so to say that there needs to be a whole lot out there really doesn't have to be, because you are going to kind of be grinding on your work most of the time. There's a good bar scene, there's good restaurants around here, there's some like forms of entertainment and everything, but whenever it comes down to it, a lot of your time is spent studying, reading, and so having an affordable place is really important. It was important in making my decision, and I think many other students.
I can talk a little bit about holding a job. So my first semester did not work, and I definitely had a lot more time for schoolwork and things like that. But in spring of last year and this year, spring of last year, I had an off-campus job. I worked at the Association of Former Students, which is like the alumni association on campus, but they're not a campus entity. So it was technically an off-campus job. I worked about 25 hours a week. And I was really fortunate that my supervisor was very flexible with my schedule. So there were some weeks when I had a really heavy class load and a lot of projects going on, and I was able to take more time to do those. And then sometimes there were weeks where I didn't have a whole lot going on, so I worked more. And I was very fortunate in that. I know that's not always the case, but there are definitely jobs like that out there and available to students. And then this year I have a GAR position, so I'm a research assistant with Dr. Chu on the MPSA side. And that, again, the hours that you choose are flexible. I just communicated to her when I was going to be doing my 20 hours a week. And I can do those at school. I can do them at home. I just communicate with my supervisor about that. And I've just found that personally, in terms of like working and going to school, it's a little more intensive than if you're not working. I know my first semester when I wasn't working, I had a lot more personal time, and now I do have less of that, but it's totally doable as long as you just pretty much are really organized, just keeping track of when your assignments are due and knowing what's coming up. It's manageable to also work about 20 to 25 hours a week. Any more than that, I think will get very, very stressful and difficult, in my opinion.
I think we're coming up on that 1 o'clock mark that we try to generally adhere to. Did want to throw out, I saw quite a few questions coming from Christy. The next slide over, we have contact information about following up with us. And so feel free to reach out to any of us, along with Catherine, remind me, Bush School admissions at tamu.edu is going to be the main, Bush School admissions at tamu.edu is going to be the main place to reach out, but the slide before provides all of our contact information if you want to reach out to any of us individually. If anyone on this Zoom call wants to reach out and just say like, hey, I'd like to talk to a student that is in this particular area, I have plenty of students on call that are willing to do that and speak to you one-on-one about their experience and talk a little bit about that. And so I think that with that, I think we can wrap up there, and thank you all for attending today. And I hope you got plenty of information about student life here at the Bush School.
Thank you, Stockton. I am going to at least answer, Christy, you had a couple of questions there, and like I said, it might be better to just address some of those in a smaller email. But one was, what are the percentage of Bush School of students of color? And I will say that right now those numbers are running in the low 30s. So somewhere between 33% to 36% for both programs for this year's incoming class. And that seems to be pretty persistent. I think we were in the high 20s last year for IA and in the 40s for MPSA. So that part definitely has been consistent. And then some of the other questions, like I said, we'll address some of those through email to you directly, just because we're out of time. So unfortunately, sorry, I didn't get a chance to kind of cover some of this area as much as we would have liked. There was another question about health clinics, and yes, there are student health clinics on campus. I think overall, just know that our students are available if you will reach out to me. We're also going to have a couple of more webinars that are coming up. So I still have an admissions one coming up on October the 4th. Matt will cover career services on October the 19th, and then financial aid on November 10th. And on our calendar, on our admissions section on the website, remember there are some Zoom Q&A hours that you can drop in and talk to either myself or Stockton or Ashley, depending on who's hosting that week. So be sure to find that on the calendar, and we can do that, or email us and we can set up a Zoom talk with you one-on-one. So thank you guys. I know we're out of time. I want to make sure we wrap up. So thank you all of the students for attending today. It was great insight. We'll have this recorded and put up on the website, hopefully within about a week. But you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for attending, and have a great rest of your week.